Hello everyone, welcome to the TCSC channel. If you like to listen to crime and mystery stories, this TCSC channel can be your choice. A channel that tells crime stories in cities across the country. Hopefully the crime stories told in this channel can increase our vigilance in our lives. If you like the content on this channel, don't forget to make comments and press the subscribe and like button. Januarius Tahu is a police officer assigned to the Sumba Barat police station. He is married to Justiana. They have been married for 5 years and have 3 children. At the time, due to his work duties, Januarius had to stay in Sumba Barat while his wife and children remained in Kupang. Initially, their household was peaceful and prosperous. Januarius would return to Kupang whenever he had leave from his police unit. However, in mid-2016, feeling lonely, Januarius asked his wife to move to West Sumba because he missed his wife and children. Unfortunately, Januarius' request was rejected by his wife, Justiana, for various reasons, one of which was the issue of their children's schooling. Justiana insisted on not leaving Kupang, her hometown. Januarius tried everything to convince Justiana to move to West Sumba. Despite his repeated pleas, Justiana ignored Januarius' request. This clearly frustrated Januarius, as he was unsure of what other methods to use to persuade his wife to live with him in West Sumba, where he was stationed for work. Such is the life of a public servant. They cannot choose their place of assignment and must comply with what the state has decided. This often led to tension between the two. Finally, on July 24, 2016, a tragic incident befell this family, and the chronology of events will be discussed in this video. Justiana, despite being married, should have been happy, but she couldn't guarantee the harmony of her household. It turned out that her wife had been having an affair with another man, and that man was actually her own father-in-law. Crazy. The affair between Justiana and her father-in-law began when her father-in-law, who happened to live next door, frequently visited her home. Since they met every day, a close bond developed between them over time. Her father-in-law also often showed her more attention and affection than what was typical of a relationship between a father-in-law and his daughter-in-law. At first, Justiana felt uncomfortable with her father-in-law's behavior and treatment toward her. However, as a normal woman who also needed attention and affection, Justiana gradually opened up and began to like her father-in-law, who gave her more attention and affection. One night when all the children were sound asleep, her father-in-law suddenly came and hugged and embraced Justiana from behind, kissing her. Justiana was startled when she was suddenly hugged and kissed by her father-in-law with such passion. At first, she resisted and tried to break free from his embrace. However, her father-in-law persistently hugged her again, and this time he kissed her lips passionately. Justiana, who had not been touched by her husband for some time, was eventually aroused by her sexual desire, and they ended up having sex in the bedroom. Day after day passed, and Justiana, who initially felt guilty toward her husband for her affair, had now grown accustomed to what she and her father-in-law were doing, satisfying their sexual desires when Justiana felt lonely, and she had become comfortable with her father-in-law. There seemed to be no regret between them, only the desire to satisfy their sexual desires again and again. Seeds of love began to grow between Justiana and her father-in-law. Something was off about his wife's attitude and treatment toward him. Her sharp words, easily offended nature, and her rush to end the phone call with him made him increasingly anxious. Januarius began to suspect his wife and wondered if she might be having an affair with another man. Finally, Januarius was convinced that his wife, Justiana, was having an affair with another man, because one day, feeling homesick for his wife, Januarius called her. However, he found her behavior very strange, as she seemed eager to end the conversation with him over the phone. He asked his wife why she wanted to hang up the phone so quickly. His wife simply replied that she had something important to take care of. Unfortunately, Justiana forgot to press the button on her phone to end the call with her husband, who at that moment was having sex with her father-in-law. Thus, Januarius clearly heard all the moans and groans of pleasure from his wife as she had sex with another man. At first, Januarius wanted to think positively about the situation he was facing at the time. However, with all the anxiety in his heart, he mustered the courage to request leave from his supervisor to return home to find out what had happened to his marriage. This time, he secretly returned home without his wife knowing. Upon returning home, the situation seemed normal. His wife was friendly, and all the family members living next door also behaved as usual. Januarius began to doubt his suspicions about his wife and felt somewhat relieved by the situation. If there were any issues or wrongdoings, his parents would certainly inform him, Januarius thought. I should trust my own wife, Januarius thought. However, that night, just as Januarius began to calm down and trust his wife's loyalty, his wife Justiana suddenly said that she was pregnant. Januarius was shocked because if he hadn't returned home for 3 months due to his government duties, how could his wife already be 1 month pregnant? Januarius then firmly demanded an honest confession from his wife, Justiana, about her pregnancy. At first, Justiana denied it and said that Januarius was being unreasonable by accusing her of something she hadn't done. However, Januarius insisted that with her pregnancy only 1 month along and him rarely being home, it was impossible for the child she was carrying to be his own. Angrily, Januarius continued to press his wife to honestly admit the man who had impregnated her while he was away on business. Eventually, Justiana, with a sense of resentment, admitted that the man who had been sleeping with her and impregnated her was Januarius's own biological father, who was also his father-in-law. Januarius was utterly shocked to hear this from his wife. He felt as though he had been struck by lightning upon hearing her confession. He could not contain his anger and emotions toward his wife. Januarius immediately struck and injured her. At the height of his overwhelming emotions, Januarius, who had lost his senses, grabbed a knife and stabbed his wife in the neck, feeling betrayed and deceived by her. When he came to his senses, Januarius was shocked and confused to see his wife lying unconscious on the floor of the house, covered in blood. Realizing that his wife was dead, Januarius immediately fled the house on his motorcycle. He headed for the Boking area in south-central Timor Regency, East Nusa Tenggara, and chose to hide in a forest area near the southern coast. Shortly thereafter, Januarius's daughter Valencia Nikin discovered her mother Justiana lying lifeless on the floor of the house, covered in blood. At that moment, the daughter screamed hysterically, startling all other family members and even the neighboring residents. One of the family members, Januarius's biological mother, immediately reported the incident to the police. Shortly thereafter, the police arrived and immediately took Justiana's body to the hospital for an autopsy. The police then conducted interrogations with several witnesses and eventually learned about Januarius, Justiana's husband, who had suddenly gone missing since the murder. After collecting several pieces of evidence, the police began to establish that Justiana's husband, Januarius, was the primary suspect in the case. Since then, the police have been conducting a massive search for Januarius, who is suspected of murdering his wife, Justiana. The suspect, Januarius, is known to have frequently moved from place to place to avoid being caught by the police, which has made it quite difficult for the police to arrest him. Since then, the police have been conducting a massive search for Januarius, who is suspected of murdering his wife, Justiana. On August 15, 2016, Januarius fled again and moved to the Baun area of Kupang district. However, this time his movements were suspected by some residents living in the area, as he was often seen alone and frequently entering and exiting the forest area on his motorcycle. Thanks to the cooperation of local residents who reported the presence of a suspicious stranger to the local village head, and with the police conducting a search in the Baon area of Kupang district, Januarius was eventually apprehended without resistance by the police. After being questioned and interrogated, Januarius eventually confessed that he had killed his wife out of jealousy, as she had been having an affair with his biological father, who had impregnated her. Januarius also felt hatred toward his biological father's immoral behavior. For this criminal act of murder, Januarius was tried in court multiple times and charged with violating Article 44.3 and Article 338 of the Criminal Code, facing a potential prison sentence of 15 years, and was also dismissed from the police force. Januarius regretted his actions, which had taken his wife's life, resulting in him having to separate from his 3 children. That's all for this true story of a criminal act. See you in the next true story. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, like, and ring the bell, and leave your comments about this story.